welcome, and thank you for joining for another whiskey review. Today, we're going to take a look at the Balvenie Ton 1401 Batch 8. Dustin, it's been a long time since we've done a Balvenie.
Yeah.
Speyside whiskey, for those of you unfamiliar with the distillery, and if you are unfamiliar, you picked a heck of a review to watch. This is one of their better offerings. Batch 8, Ton 1401, famed at this point.
Yeah, the whole
Balvenie
series of
releases.
1401s,
Correct.
really. That's incredible.
Correct. Incredible, basically blends of different years of Balvenie whiskey, both bourbon cask maturation and sherry cask maturation. We have been fortunate enough to now bring you the second bottle. We did batch 9 before, and this one being batch 8. Comes in at 50.2% ABV, and this one's made from 12 total casks, Dustin. These 12 casks, we have 3 ex-sherry casks and 9 ex-bourbon casks. This was bottled in 2013. 3 sherry casks were from 1970, 71, and 73, making the sherry whiskey and the sherry component in this whiskey 40, 42, and 43 years old, if my count's right. There were also 9 bourbon casks. Also, 3 of those bourbon casks matched the same year as the sherry casks, 70, 71, and 73. So 6 of the 12 barrels are all over 40 years old in this one. The remaining 6 bourbon casks are some other 70s vintages, 75, 77, 78, as well as I think 81, 82, and 1 barrel being from 1991. So basically, if you had to put an age statement on this, it would be 22-year-old whiskey, but of the 12 barrels, 11 of them are at least 30 years old. And again, a hefty 6 of the 12 are at least 40-year-old whiskey. Very dark for only being 3 sherry barrels, but that's the beauty of these old Ton 1401s. There were some really old whiskey.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember, Mike, also a sherry butt is substantially bigger than a bourbon barrel.
Yeah.
So when you're saying, a barrel count, they only make up 3, but by volume, those are probably 4. That probably counts as 4. So that's probably like 12 barrels to 8. So it's actually probably might even be more sherry.
Yeah, I mean, who because how much, alcohol do you really have after over 40 years of maturation, too? I mean, evaporation is something you would definitely have to consider. That's almost perfect.
Yeah, and these are cask strength, and this only comes in at 50.2, I believe.
50.2,
yeah. So, yeah, there definitely was probably some Angels lost. I don't know. I haven't had a lot of cask strength Balvenie in general, Mike. They don't really do a lot, and I've never seen an independent Balvenie.
No. The only Balvenie cask strength bottles we've ever gotten are just the Ton 1509 and 1401s. I don't think I've ever had another one. I've had a 45.7s, or 47.8s, excuse me, in the single barrel series. But it's a rare treat to get cask strength Balvenie. Paid a very hefty price to get this particular bottle, traded 2 Mac 18s from 1993. I got a couple dollars back in change, but not a trade I have regretted for 1 second. Dustin, opened this bottle immediately as soon as I made the deal, as you know. So enough talk. Let's get.
By the way, just to anybody out there in the comment section, if you know of independent Balvenie, let us know. I've actually never seen one.
Yeah. One does not come to mind for sure.
Oh my God!
All right, right on the nose. This is just such dense old sherry.
Oh man! Every time I go back in, there's another layer. So I'm getting deep caramel. I'm getting a slightly grapey note. I'm getting very rich oak. I'm getting mint.
It reminds me the grape note for sure. Like the sherry is so rich and so deep on this. It almost reminds me of Lagavulin 21 from 1991. Like, just an overly sherried whiskey.
Oh,
like, if you told me this was only sherry at first nosing, I would absolutely believe it. Besides what you mentioned, though, an incredible, rich, candied honey sweetness. But it's, again, an old honey. I know I called the batch 9 of the 1401 an old forest honey. Mm-hmm. This doesn't seem maybe as old or as dank, but it is still a rich, old, beautiful honey.
Yeah, I mean, I was starting to, think in my head, it's like a little bit hardened honey. But I tell you what, the more I go in, it's actually kind of very approachable and very sweet.
Very sweet whiskey.
I meant the honey note.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, for sure. We've had this bottle. We drank this bottle down a few times. This is about the 5th time we've had it. I've had it open for about 5 months. It was great, really, from the first pour. So the only thing it's done is just become more candied as it's been opened, and it's been allowed to oxidize. Really good point right now with this whiskey. So yeah, it's almost comes off like a carameled candy.
Yeah.
with like a honey type coating on top of it and just sugar drizzled all over top of it.
I can't express how old this smells.
I agree.
Like those things of like, bookstore and old leather. In fact, we were talking about that Compass box. Not Compass box, the Vellicor. And they were talking about the old bookstore notes.
Yeah, it's
I'm
good.
getting old bookstore on this thing. This is Vellicor.
Absolutely.
That whiskey, not quite as much.
Remember when we found those old you found those old Balvenie 15 single barrels like that store in Kentucky,
Yeah.
and they had dust all over top of them.
Oh, yeah.
But inside they still have the little booklet.
And
The booklet,
yellow.
yeah. And it went dingy. But like right when you first open it, it's kind of like that old paper that's been sealed, like a parchment
exactly.
almost. Yeah, but this is about. I want to say rich, maybe rich isn't the right word. The most old and refined version of a sherry whiskey maybe I've ever smelled.
It's so incredibly clean sweetness. There's nothing off-putting. I mean, there might be a hint of a bitterness from the oak, but I mean that's a hint.
I've had it with water in the past, but I'm not picking it up right now. I've shared this with a couple of people.
Just a drop.
I've shared this with a couple of people, and everyone immediately goes to that sherry note that knows whiskey.
Yeah, I mean, who are you giving this to that doesn't know whiskey, Mike?
Only a few people. I'm going to give this to a few people anyway. You're right. I'm speaking about Jason, but our buddy from Ash and Drum. But I remember when I gave him this, he was like, "Man, this might be the oldest sherry smell I've ever had." And you're right. It's just old. It's not really dirty or musty per se. It's just that didn't come quickly.
Yeah, when you have that Glengoyne 25, that was well-aged whiskey. This, is
Ultra
whiskey.
aged.
Like
whiskey.
this takes, like the Glengoyne 30 we reviewed and that we have on the channel. That might be the oldest sherry whiskey we've reviewed. So
Yeah, but it's not just about being old. You can have old whiskey that's pungent and too oaky and too bitter, and it doesn't do nice
no,
things.
in a very good way. This is nailing all those things. Oh man,
Yeah, it just keeps getting more candied as you go in.
I got a drink, man.
Yeah, go for it, buddy. Yeah, but I mean, again, a lot of the same Balvenie notes you would expect. A lot of the honey, the caramel, it's really sweet. There's some maltiness. You still got a little bit of that malt character to it, but it is just absolutely candied brilliance. I can say, here's a cake, but the best version of that cake ever, here's where we're at. What are you picking up on the palate?
So instantly, I get the classic Balvenie malt profile. Like, for example, that 15 you just brought up, the old bourbon one. Mm-hmm. You get that beautiful malt that's so rich, so complex, brings you so much. While, normally when I think of complex scotches, I'm thinking of something a little peaty. I'm thinking of something that's got a whole bunch of cask maturation. But Balvenie's malt just is incredibly, little bit of fruit, really honeyed, brings in vanillas, and it's they have so much depth and range. Then you have this incredible sherry, old world richness. There's hints of chocolates, there's hints of prunes, but there's just something old and refined that were like leathered books that have been sitting in a bookstore. It's added this depth and age and richness. I mean, it's absolutely perfect 40-something-year-old whiskey notes coming through here.
So lively on the palate for old whiskey. It is so popping. The sherry notes that we focused on mainly on the nose are all there, but really,
Chocolate, prunes,
yeah,
all
for
that
sure.
stuff, yeah.
But really, what is the added enjoyment that you weren't expecting was what the bourbon casks are doing here. Mm-hmm. The chewy oak note that the bourbon casks give this. There's a forgiveness to the spirit as far as it being. It comes off slightly aggressive. I mean, on the palate. Even at that age, because it's still again a good 50%, but the vanilla oak note that I believe is being imparted by those bourbon casks is so perfect and rounded. It's almost like
chewy.
Yeah, it's almost
caramel
like
nougat.
yeah, like I would say crumb pie, or like almost like the density of a waffle almost, as far as like the chewy texture to that oak
It's like
note.
burnt nougat or something. I mean, it's like
Yeah, it's almost like it's almost like it's denser than a traditional whiskey or something like that. It's just so full.
some dessert where they set it on fire.
Yeah,
the
just
process.
every nuance of this liquid just has complexity in it, where it's just moving around. I'm gonna try to put a couple drops of water, see if it changes anything. You really have to be careful with whiskey this old.
I will also kind of add this, Mike. It does have a bit of an alcohol kick at the end. Even gave me just a hint of a hug,
Yeah, it does.
which you don't expect at 50%. You don't expect with the youngest whiskey being in here at 23, but I guess they put that in here to add a little bit of youthful spark.
And maybe it's just that one cask that isn't a 30-some-year-old cask. Maybe.
But it definitely, like, there's a
It's
bite
popping.
here, like,
It's
if
popping.
you told me there was like a 12-year-old in here, I would have been like, okay, so they threw one little guy in here to kind of actually add a little something.
You know,
Okay.
you would say that if it wasn't full of flavor. I mean, but this one is, like I said, just packed with flavor. I mean, they get every piece, every bit of this whiskey just has something going on in it. Oh man, this is so good. This might be one of the best Balvenies I've ever had.
After John Glazer kind of came out with that Gumpus Fox the Bellacore and talked about it, I used to always bring up leather, like old leathers. Mm-hmm. But I am so with that idea of that old whiskey and that bookstore note, and that is exactly what I'm smelling with water.
Yeah, but this is really
Intense. I mean, I feel like I'm literally in an old bookstore or an antique store. There's some old furniture around there. There's old books.
Yeah, the weather's crisp, and you know it's a cool, like the air is light, but it's crisp, and it's a cold day.
It's a 55-degree.
You just had a coffee earlier in the day. Football season's around the corner, but no, man, it is just an incredible whiskey. Again, this might be the best Balvenie I've ever had, and I've had a lot of them. Oh, man. I used to always think the 30 was the best overall whiskey of the Balvenie that I've had before. I haven't had the 40, but I have to rethink that. This has everything.
The people want to know what the 50's like, Mike. So next time you see one of those, just bring it over.
Believe me, so do I.
Yeah, no, makes two of us. Jeez.
Yeah, but this is about as close as you can get to just perfect Balvenie, in my opinion. You know, this is the story. I've had a lot of bottles, and I've enjoyed a lot of like the 12, the 17, the 21, the 15 single barrels. I mean, Balvenie had a large place in my whiskey journey, and this is just the best version of everything that I love about Balvenie. The honey is as good as any honey in any Balvenie. Candied caramel, and this is just beautiful, and the vanilla oak note from the bourbon cask, and this is just unmatched in any other previous bottling I've ever had.
Yeah, there's something. It's not a pastry. It's not a bread.
I said a waffle, but you're getting what I'm saying.
I was almost. I mean, there's even part of me thinking some kind of like nut elements coming out now, but I can't. I mean, it's like a pastry with a slightly bit of nuttiness with like this beautiful, like rich, like dirty old caramel.
Dude, this is almost like a. Recently picked up some pastries for the people at work, and one person ordered this deep fried croissant that it was stuffed with cherry filling. Mm-hmm. It was delicious. I had a little piece of it.
Yeah,
it's almost like that with just honey drizzled on top.
And
of
again,
it.
it's like there's some kind of like sugary thing here that again has been touched by flame. What's that? That ice cream though? A lot of Mexican restaurants will do.
Yeah, the fried ice cream.
The fried ice cream thing. Mm-hmm. Like it's almost got like some elements of that kind of a thing where there's something about it where flame has touched some kind of sugar.
It's caramelized it.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't burn it, didn't add any like fire or smoke, but it added.
It brought out some type of over the top sweetness you couldn't have otherwise got to.
This like combination of like candied sweetness, that like a bready pastry thing that they're not separate; they're like joined.
Yeah, I mean, it's like to me that's why I said waffle. It was like waffle with like powdered sugar and then like brown sugar on top of that. While you have like a coffee, an espresso in the background, just like simmering with that like bitter espresso. Like it's there, you can tell it's there, but you can't really taste the bitterness. But you can tell that dark chocolate note is just lingering in the background.
I almost get a hint of like white tea as well on the finish. Slightly bitter, but like, you know, if you had white tea, it's much less bitter than say a green tea even. Just a hint of this sort of, it's sort of like the mouthfeel where it's even just a little bit of bitter. It's probably coming from the oak, but it's very, it's subtle, nuanced, and very, very, very inviting.
And towards the end here, I'm getting this. I'm struggling to kind of knock down what fruit this is, but it's almost like a vanilla peach.
There's definitely some fruits in here, but yeah, there's nothing like it's fruity. To me, it's almost like an ester.
You know how you have like vanilla chocolate pretzels, like white chocolate covered pretzels. It's almost like a white chocolate covered peach. Man, I tell you what. You ever get like white peach off the Balvenie 21? Remember I've said that note before on that? It's similar to that, but it's really more vanilla intense. That's why I say white chocolate vanilla. Yep. You know what I'm saying?
The more I go into this, the more there is sort of an overlying, lightly cocoaed chocolate element here. Very subtle. Again, this is not chocolatey. This is not like, oh, that's chocolate. There's just something there that kind of
subtle
lingers.
cocoa.
There's subtle. It leaves just some of that.
And now here at the very end, Dustin, a wisp of tobacco smoke.
Yeah.
Like with that tobacco
tobacco's
smoke, I'm finally getting that mint. That mint and the tobacco smoke kind of came together.
I don't get a lot of mint on the palate. The nose I had a little bit more.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying just right now. I got a little bit of that tobacco smoke, mint.
And that tobacco actually is a similar note to that white tea thing I was talking about. I think they're coming in the same vein because I'm with you on that too.
Yeah, man. Wow, what an incredible whiskey.
But I think it's the first time I've actually distinctly thought white tea on a whiskey. Black tea I've gotten for sure. Green tea, it's usually a bad thing, and probably Balvenie 12. The single barrel maybe brought some of that out. But yeah, this has got that little bit of white tea.
You know, you said there's not chocolate, you're right, but it is cocoa. And then it just, sensation, that vanilla note from the oak. That vanilla oak note, that waffly vanilla oak. Wow, man, that's a heck of a whiskey. I could probably sit here all day and pick out different flavors. It'd be fun to do that. We've done something similar a few times. But I think this whiskey's hitting a great spot. I'm glad we chose now.
Yeah, no, this is a good time. Because I think the first couple times we had this, it was...
It was great, but just not its best.
It was a little slightly closed off compared to this on the first pour. The second pour we had, I feel like it was a little tannic.
With water it was.
Especially with water, but I think even in general there was just a little... Now, that tannicness is just that little bit of spiciness, that little bit of bitter from like that tea, which I like. It complements the upfront thing.
This is a masterpiece.
But you know what the other thing is, Mike? We keep talking about how sweet this is, but it's not super sweet. It's all these beautiful, really nice, sweet elements, but it's not like it's sugary. It's not like you feel like, oh, this is dessert and I can't keep going.
Well, you do on the nose. As soon as but the palate's a way different experience. Because again, Balvenie's always been a kind of a malty spirit to me. You know what I mean? That maltiness is there. Yes,
but
it is.
Even then, the nose, again, it has those old leathers, those old books.
You're right. It's not all sweet.
Yeah,
There's substance
it's not something that like is so cloyingly sweet. If you're somebody who's like, I don't really like too sweet. It's not that at all. It just because again, I keep going back to the sort of almost savory pastry elements, the bookstore notes, the leathers.
I mean, really, it's all of these things.
Yeah,
I mean, it's all of it. It really is.
It's incredibly balanced while being essentially, again, a sweet malt forward whiskey.
This is one of those that if you really want to focus on the tobacco notes and the mint notes, they're there. The malty notes, the vanilla, the caramels. You just want the overall sweetness. Or if you really want to dig deep to try to pick out the fruits. I mean, it's all here. You can focus on whatever you choose to focus on. But just for the sake of review, I try to say as many things as possibly come up to me. Incredible whiskey. So, obviously, as far as a score, where are we at with this thing, Dustin? Again, I will say this with certain confidence. I am confident in saying this is the best Balvenie I've ever tried. And again, brought a lot, brought all the core range, 1509s. The batch 9 of the 1401, I prefer it to that. I prefer it to the 30. I prefer it to the 25 single barrel. I prefer it to all those. Again, it's my favorite. I have yet to have one that will surpass it. And I'm kind of kicking two numbers around in my head, but I'd like to hear what you think first.
That's why I just finished mine because I tell you what, this is tough.
It is.
This is missing a lot of the things that I look for in really good whiskey in terms of just flavors I just gravitate towards.
No peat in this thing.
No peat. It's not as, even though it is super sherried, it's not quite hitting the notes that I love in sherried whiskeys.
Balvenie sherry. Dusty sherry.
It doesn't remind me of like the 15 sherry, though.
No.
Very different cask.
No.
I love this whiskey.
Old
Absolutely.
Wood.
It's a unique experience, and everything about this is perfectly done.
But how good is a Balvenie? What's a Balvenie really? You know what I'm saying? That was always the question.
93, Mike.
Yeah, I've been going back and
forth. This has to be up there as one of the better whiskeys, even though it's not making me fall in love.
It's a great whiskey.
It's just so well done.
Yeah, I've been going back and forth between a 92 and a 93, and this is what I'll say. Enjoyment-wise, I'm absolutely at a 93. I mean, as far as what it is, as far as a whiskey, I thought it was probably 92 going into this in my head, because really going from 92 to 93 is a significant step up. 93 is rare territory. 93, 94, 95, I mean, really, how many whiskeys
we don't give those scores. We don't give 92s very often.
Yeah, not anymore. That's for sure. But you know what? I came in with thinking 92, but I will go up to 93. I think this is the best from this distillery I've ever had. I feel confident saying that. On top of that, not being non-peated, it's almost a perfect whiskey. It really is.
It is.
It kicks. It has pop to it. It feels young at times, especially on the palate, but it smells old. The finish is old. It's sticky. It's a whiskey that, man, you will always remember that waffly vanilla oak note with all that beautiful, rich, sugary sherry and all the fruits on this thing.
This is just.
I will always compare Speyside whiskeys, unless it's a heavily sherried one. I will always say a complex Speyside whiskey. How's it stack up to this eventually?
Yeah, it's honestly, this just goes to show the quality of casks they had 45 years ago.
Well, yeah, if it was bottled in the 70s, that wood had to be from the 60s at least. It may have been way older wood. You never know. But again, you're talking material that just doesn't exist in today's world.
No, old world trees, all that stuff. Just totally different.
Totally different world.
Man.
And a good distillery like Balvenie, and picked over and watched over by a true master of the distillery, or of just the craft in general.
There's a reason people are chasing after Balvenies, and we're seeing prices skyrocketing on the secondary market right now for this distillery. They're one of the big names, and they've been there for a while, and they've been producing incredible whiskey for a long time, and stuff from the past.
Yeah, but this was some of their masterpieces. This was a bottle again in 2013. I remember looking at these a long time ago. I think I was in Kentucky at the Party Source and seeing an old 1401 and thinking, there's no age statement on that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this was one of the rare occasions, because it is an NAS whiskey. Though we know the ages, it is an NAS whiskey. I remember thinking like, wow, $400 or whatever it was, $450. That's so much for an NAS whiskey. Let me look at this 45.8% Talisker 25 for $500. Or something like that.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was not as wise of a purchase for sure. But anyway, I'm glad I finally got my hands on this one. Again, it was not cheap. I paid a hefty price. I gave away about the equivalent of about $1,500 in whiskey, to get this bottle, and I do not regret it for 1 second. I am so glad I got my hands on this thing.
And and now that's a $2,000-$3,000 bottle.
Oh, for sure. I know.
It's
hefty cost.
And these are not cheap. If you find one of these things for around $1,000, I would jump on it if you can do it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, this is $1,500 whiskey at all times. But again, if you're a fan of this distillery and you like a higher ABV and you like more flavor, and again, Balvenie, I'm not saying it's my favorite distillery. It's in my top 10 for sure, maybe top 5.
You go through your collection back there, Mike.
Balvenie
is represented.
Yeah, heavily. This is the best I've ever had from this distillery. This particular one, this batch 8 from the 1401. Anyway.
Excellent.
I've heard batch 3 and batch 5 are also hitters too. Love to get my hands on some of those and bring them to you guys. I will do everything I can to make sure that happens. Until then, Dustin, what do we want to say to the folks? Join us on some live streams that we've been doing lately. Patreon, we'll put a link to it at the end. We're going to do some fun things as far as whiskey samples. And until next time, what do we wish the folks?
Happy drinking.
We'll see you then.